Chapter 1105. Actually, even though we surpassers possess magic that the humans of Edras do not possess, our fighting prowess is not that great. We have been bullied by the humans since a long time ago. In front of all the stunned surpassers, Haggard closed his eyes, clasped his hands, and began to speak softly. At that time, the people even began to question their own existence. They even began to feel confused about their own survival. They completely lost the confidence to continue living, causing the entire race of surpassers to sink into the abyss of extinction. If this continues, I'm sure our race will be truly destroyed, right? Haggard said with a gloomy smile. In order to restore the confidence of those clansmen, and to prevent them from being bullied by humans, I discussed with the elders of the clan. In the end, we decided to tell a lie that could even deceive our clansmen and the entire world. A lie. Noah's eyes flashed as he looked at Haggard. So that's why you said you're not a queen or an omnipotent god. Yes, and that is the truth. I am just a normal surpasser. Haggard shook his head. No, it is not right to call me a normal surpasser. Compared to the rest of our race, I have a very special ability. Special ability? Noah was taken aback. Look, even if I call myself a god and pretend to be very powerful to deceive the humans and make them fear us so that they will no longer target us surpassers, there's no way they'll believe me if I just say it verbally, Haggard explained. However, my special ability allows me to make these words more believable and make the humans believe that I am a god. With Haggard's reminder, Noah recalled something. Why would the Queen of the Surpassers be called a god? It was because the Queen of the Surpassers had the power to decide the life and death of humans. She had the power to control the population of humans. I do not have that kind of power, Haggard admitted. I just have the ability to foresee things, and I can more or less foresee some things in the future. Hearing this, Noah understood. Indeed. Haggard did not have the power to decide the life and death of humans. The only thing he had was the ability to predict the time of death. Humans who don't know about this gradually believe that I have the power to decide the life and death of humans and manage the humans in this world. Shagat smiled weakly. It was because of this that the so-called God became more and more convincing. My people became angels that served God and were revered and worshipped by humans. Haggard's words caused the other surpassers to look at each other. They could see the despair in each other's eyes. It turned out that the so-called gods and angels were nothing more than an illusion. Surpassers. It was a rather ironic name. They made it sound so aloof, but in the end, weren't they just a weak race that could only rely on lies to maintain their status and instill fear in the hearts of the humans to protect themselves because they were powerless against the humans? Seeing Noya frowning after hearing Shargade's words, the surpassers felt the urge to run away when they recalled how they had been so aggressive in front of this powerful human who had the power to destroy the entire army of Edras and how Noya had threatened to take him down. However, Noah wasn't going to argue with a bunch of ignorant commoners. Furthermore, Noah didn't care whether the transcendent status of the transcendent race was real or not. Then why did you have Faust attack Aslan? Noah narrowed his eyes as he looked at Haggard. Do you know that because of your decision, my guild and my companions were almost turned into manna for you? As he said that, Noah locked his aura onto Haggard, causing him to feel suffocated and his body to tremble. I am very sorry. Haggard could only squeeze out the words with great difficulty. Because we have become the gods and angels of Edras, we are omnipotent existences to the humans. When the mana in this world began to dry up, the human king asked us for help, so, in order to not let your lie be exposed, you proposed to Faust the idea of absorbing magic from Astra, which directly led to the appearance of anima and indirectly almost caused the death of my companions. Noah sneered. It's a pretty good way to protect yourself, isn't it? Haggard was speechless. Actually, there was one more thing he hadn't told Noah. Haggard had long predicted that a terrifying existence from Aslan had set his sights on the surpassers. That person was Noah. Of course, Noah had indeed set his sights on the surpassers. From the very beginning, Noah had come with the intention of settling the score with Haggart. That was why, to ensure that the surpassers wouldn't be harmed by Noah, Haggart had second night send a decree to the humans in the name of God, claiming that a human named Noah would cause the extinction of the humans of Edris and that the kingdom of Edris would resist Noah. Who would have thought that right after that decision was made and second night sent the decree to the royal capital, Noah would appear. Among the group of surpassers who were sent flying by Noah, there were a few who were lucky enough to be in the periphery and didn't suffer too much damage. That was why those surpassers brought back news of Noah's destruction of the royal army of Edris. Knowing that he wouldn't be able to escape this time, Haggart could only resign himself to his fate and hope that he could be forgiven by Noah. No. That wasn't right either. I don't expect to be forgiven by you. Haggart finally faced Noah head-on for the first time and pleaded sincerely to Noah. I only hope that you won't make things difficult for my tribesmen. They don't know anything. I beg you. After saying that, Haggart actually knelt down in front of Noah and even knocked his head on the ground. Your Majesty. Please don't do this. Your Majesty. The surpassers and the surroundings were all panicking. Only the surpasser elders who supported Haggart knelt and kowtowed. I beg you. Please don't make things difficult for my tribesmen. Seeing the queen and the elder kneeling in front of a human, the surpassers realized what kind of situation they were in. They all fell into a state of panic. Seeing Haggart and the surpasser elders kneel before him for the sake of their tribesmen, Noah couldn't help but fall silent. At that moment, there was only one thought in Noah's mind. If he didn't have the power to resist the entire kingdom of Edris, would he kneel to Faust for the sake of his companions and the guild under the threat of Anima? The answer was, of course, yes. As long as it was for the guild, for his companions and for his family, Noah wouldn't even bat an eyelid if he had to be beheaded, let alone kneeling. But when that time came, wouldn't it mean that he had nowhere else to go? Wasn't Haggart and the surpasser elders doing this because they had nowhere else to go? After all, the only difference between them and Noah was that they didn't have enough power to protect the people they cared about. Realizing this, Noah was even more determined to become stronger. At the same time, the anger in his heart had no choice but to dissipate. Forget it, Noah said with a sigh and turned around. Seeing that you're doing this for the sake of your tribesmen, I won't hold it against you. The moment those words left his mouth, before Haggart and the others could even rejoice, Noah's voice rang out. But don't forget that you're not the only one who has something to protect. You can sacrifice the things that others need to protect for the things that you need to protect. Therefore, sooner or later, others will also sacrifice you for the things that they need to protect. After those words, Noah leaped into the air and soared into the sky with the help of Hermes's boots. The surpassers were left behind in an indescribable silence. Chapter 1106. In the end, I came to Edris with a heart full of anger, only to teach a bunch of arrogant royal soldiers a lesson. After leaving Extania, Noah flew into the sky and stopped in mid-air. He couldn't help but smile bitterly as he recalled everything that had happened in less than 2 days in Edris. Noah had let Faust go for the sake of Mishgang. Noah had let Haggart go for the sake of a trace of resonance. Furthermore, the problem of Anima was about to be solved. Noah's trip this time was worth it. Of course, this was also because nothing had happened to Fairy Tale. If something had happened to Fairy Tale because of Anima, then no matter how close Mishgang and Noah were, and no matter how hard Haggart kowtowed, Noah wouldn't let the two of them go. Although, this is just a theory of results. Regardless, Noah's goal in coming to Edris had been accomplished. Now, all that was left was to wrap things up. With that thought in mind, Noah lifted his head and looked at the sky. Wang. No one knew if it was a good plan or not, but the sky that had become extremely dark suddenly surged up like water that had been boiled. Has it begun? As Noah muttered, the pitch-black clouds suddenly spun like a huge whirlpool. Not long after, a huge hole appeared in the center of the whirlpool like dark clouds. Beep, beep, beep. Dazzling flashes of lightning began to flash from the huge hole. Whoosh! The howling wind also seemed to be stirring up a storm, causing the entire sky to become violent. Under such circumstances, from the ground below, streams of seemingly substantial air currents rose like steam without any warning. They were carried by the violent winds and soared into the sky. They were like streams of water that flowed into the huge hole in the sky. As the thick, substantial airflow was absorbed by the huge hole, the entire Idris underwent an earth-shattering change. Rumble. With Extania in the lead, the floating islands in the air suddenly lost their buoyancy for no reason and turned into huge meteors that slowly fell to the ground amidst a series of tremors. The floating islands were able to float in the air because of the mana contained in the ground of the floating islands. At that moment, whether it was the mana contained within the ground of the floating island or the mana contained within the vast land of the Edras continent, all of it was being reversed by the anima and turned into streams of dense air currents that flowed into the world of Aslan through the gigantic hole. Of course, this wasn't just limited to the mana contained in the earth. Even the mana stored in the magic crystals, magical weapons, and magical tools that humans extracted from the earth and created into magic crystals, magical weapons, and magical tools began to transform into streams of mana that rose into the sky. As a result, the imperial capital that was like a paradise with the support of magic fell into unprecedented chaos. Chapter 1107. At first, Noah was worried that the flow of time between Aslan and Edras would be different. In the past, he had left for less than an hour, but in the end, an entire month had passed in the world of fairy tale. Now, this was the first time that a case like this happened. This worry was not unfounded. In fact, Noah had been to two parallel worlds in the world of the M-shaped moon. One of the two parallel worlds was about 10 years ago, while the other was about 10 years later. Since Aslan and Edras were also parallel worlds, then there was a need to consider whether there would be problems with time between the two worlds. Fortunately, unlike the world of the M-shaped moon, the flow of time between Isrand and Edras was almost exactly the same. In other words, however long Noah spent in Edras, the same amount of time had passed in Isrand. Therefore, when Noah returned to Isrand from the world of Edras, it was already 1 or 2 days after the incident with Anima. Of course, compared to the other two things, this 1 or 2 days seemed so insignificant. One of these two things was naturally the arrival of the transcendence of Extania in Isrand. That day, the scene of a large group of cats like Hubby and Xiao Lulu descending from the sky really destroyed the worldview of many fairy tale sorcerers. This was especially so for Hubby and Xiao Lulu, who had only seen each other as fellow transcendents, and had not seen any other transcendents before this. However, compared to the people of fairy tale, the transcendents of Extania were actually very happy about their arrival in Isrand. After all, in Edras, the transcendents were bullied because they were too weak. In order to not be bullied, they had to tell the big lie of gods and angels. It was really quite tiring for them. To be able to leave that kind of world and come to a new magical world, for the transcendence of Extania, it was indeed like a new life. As for Hubby and Xiao Lulu, to be able to see so many of their fellow transcendents, they could not say that they were happy, but there were also some who seemed to be unhappy. It could be said that it was very complicated. The reason was naturally because Hubby and Xiao Lulu were thrown into the world of Isrand before they were even born. Perhaps it was because Hubby and Xiao Lulu had seen through the grudge in their hearts towards the transcendents. After meeting them, Hubby and Xiao Lulu seemed to have a lot to talk about in private. After that, Hubby and Xiao Lulu seemed to have untied a lot of the knot in their hearts and regained their vitality. The next day, Shagat led the entire race of surpassers away from fairy tale. Although the transcendents in fairy tale felt that it was very interesting to have the entire transcendents join the guild, it was a pity that the transcendents generally did not have high combat strength. If they only worked as archmages for a living, they would definitely not be able to support so many transcendents. Therefore, hubby proposed to find another place to live and let the transcendents live a peaceful life. He led the transcendents away from fairy tale. Hubby and Xiao Lulu did not follow them. Hubby and Xiao Lulu also did not invite Hubby and Xiao Lulu to come with them. Presumably, the three of them had talked a lot before this. Therefore, when they left, they parted ways amidst laughter and laughter. However, in addition to Hubby and Xiao Lulu, there was another transcendent who stayed in fairy tale. Compared to the transcendents, this place is more suitable for me. Standing on top of a table, a black cat that looked no different from Hubby and Xiao Lulu said seriously. It looked more like a leopard cub than a cat. Also, I want to see what's so special about the place the prince has been staying in for so many years. Hearing that, the transcendents in fairy tale welcomed it with open arms. Only Noah looked at the black cat that was no different from Hubby and Xiao Lulu in size. Then, he thought of the decisiveness and courage in the battle with him. His expression was somewhat strange. That black cat was none other than Lili, captain of the 2nd Magic War Unit of the Edra's army, Pansalili. Because Aslan's magic seemed to reject Lili's physique to a certain extent, it couldn't tolerate Lili's unique physique. Lili's body became like this when he passed through the anima. In that form, Lili's battle prowess was like heaven and earth compared to before. In his current form, although Lili's combat power was still much higher than Hubby's and Xiao Lulu's, there was still a gap between him and an ordinary magic shooter, not to mention the power that he possessed when he was the captain of the magic army like Alusa of Edras. Of course, Lili could still return to his original form through his own magic power. However, that form could only be maintained for a short period of time. But the moment he returned to his original form, Lili's battle prowess would instantly recover. By then, even if he couldn't compare to Alusha, Lili would definitely be able to match Naz and Grey. The fairy tale members who hadn't experienced Lili's battle prowess welcomed him with indifference. Only Noah looked at Lili's short stature and thought back to the youth's burly form. No matter how he looked at it, it felt weird. However, Noah understood Lili's words. Unlike the average surpasser, Lili had been in the royal army for a long time and had long been used to fighting and killing. Instead of leaving with the surpassers who stood aloof from worldly affairs, it was better to stay in the fairy tale. It was indeed more suitable for Lili. No one was happier about this than Gadjalu. Gadjalu came in front of Lili, who was standing on the table, and stared at him. After a while, he grinned. It seems that you're different from the blue cat and the white cat over there. You seem to be very strong. Hearing Gadjalu's words, the corners of Lili's mouth rose slightly into a somewhat wanton arc. Do you want to try? Hee hee. Gadjalu's face suddenly showed a standard evil man's smile. Just what I want. The sudden development made the fairy tale's magic shooters all cheer. Hey, hey, hey! Lucy shouted in a flurry. Why did it suddenly become like this? What? What? A fight? Naz's face was full of excitement, and he rolled up his sleeves. Count me in too. Not only Naz, but even Grey and Elfman were eager to give it a try. All of a sudden, they really got into a mess and started fighting. This made Lucy and Wendy panic, and also made Mira and Lisanna smile knowingly. In the direction of the bar, they watched this lively scene that was as lively as usual. The scene was very warm. In front of the bar, Noah told Makarov, Kildas, and Alusha about Mishgang. Is that so? Alusha's expression was somewhat regretful. Did you leave Mishgang there? After all, Edras is his home. Kildas didn't seem surprised. For the sake of Aslan, who he's never seen before, that guy could come here at such a young age and protect this world for so long. Now that Edras's mana has disappeared and the world has fallen into chaos, it's impossible that he didn't stay. But the departure of an S-rank magic shooter is a huge loss to our guild, Makarov sighed softly. It's really a pity. Mishgang is just continuing on the path he believes in. Noah suddenly smiled. As partners in the same guild, all we can do is support him. Alusha and the others looked at each other and nodded. Chapter 1108. That's right. At this time, Makarov suddenly changed the topic. Speaking of the S-rank archmage, this year's seems to be coming soon, right? That? Noah was slightly startled. That? Alusha and Kildas were also startled, but then they seemed to have thought of something and suddenly understood. So, another year has passed, Alusa said with a sigh. Time really flies. S-rank archmage. Kildas was a little nostalgic. I haven't been in the guild for a long time. If the president didn't mention it, I almost forgot. Not only Alusha and Kildas, but even Mira and Lisana, who were working at the bar, seemed to have noticed what Makarov was talking about. This year's is coming soon. Mira smiled gently as always. Naz and Gray should be very happy, right? Also, Brother Elf seems to have been looking forward to this matter. Lisana also said with a smile. Plus, this year, our guild also has a lot of capable newcomers. It will be very lively. Seeing that Alusha, Kildas, Mira, and even Lisana understood Makarov's meaning, Noah was curious. What is that? As soon as this question came out, Makarov, Alusha, Kildas, Mira, and Lisana were all startled, and then they reacted. Speaking of which, since many years ago when he got Kildas's magic crush, Noah has been away from the guild for a long time. Alusha reminded. In order to be able to fully control the magic crush, Noah trained outside for 4 years. Then he went to Celestial Wolf Island to receive the guidance of the first generation. Another 2 years passed, and he didn't come back until recently. It hasn't even been half a year since he came back. After being reminded by Alusha, everyone was once again enlightened. Especially Kildas, who looked at Noah with some surprise in his eyes. Are you able to fully control the magic crush? Well, because I have been training my mana control for a long time since I was a child, I have some experience in controlling it. Although Noah didn't know why Alusha suddenly mentioned this matter, he still answered Kildas's question truthfully. But even so, it took me 4 years to fully control the magic crush. It only took you 4 years to control the magic crush, and you're still not satisfied. Kildas was speechless. Even until now, I still haven't been able to completely control the shattering magic. As expected of you. Now that you think about it, it's true that Big Brother Noah has only been back for less than half a year. Lisana leaned on the bar and looked at Noah with eyes full of love. It feels like Big Brother Noah has been back for a long time. It's incredible. That's right. Mira also turned her gaze to Noah. Her eyes were closed as she smiled. It's like they've been together for a long time. Alusha looked at Noah with a gentle gaze after hearing Mira and Lisana's words. On the other hand, Makarov and Kildas snickered at Noah with a wretched expression. Noah felt a little embarrassed and could only speak up helplessly. Stop talking in riddles. Hurry up and tell me what it is. However, Noah's words did not attract the attention of the group. Instead, they fell silent. If you think about it this way, Noah. Alusha said to Noah. You're not an S-rank magic shooter yet, right? That's right. Noah asked curiously. Is there a problem? There's a big problem. Makarov shouted at Noah, not even caring about the wine glass in his hand. Noah, for the next period of time, don't do anything. Spend all your time on work. Work? Noah was stunned. But I'm not short of money. Not only was he not short of money. Noah had a treasure trove full of gold and silver that could be replenished automatically. From now on, he would not have to worry about money. Under such circumstances, why would he spend his time on work? Did he have nothing better to do? However, in the face of Noah's words, not only Makarov, but even Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha were not willing to accept it. "All right, Noah, just listen to the president," Mira said gently. "For the next period of time, spend all your time on work. Don't worry about anything else." "This time, I won't help you, Noah," Alusha said seriously. "This is for your own good. Hurry up and work hard, young man." Kilda smiled cheekily. "Back in the day, I was also busy for a period of time. Everyone went through it like this. All in all, big brother Noah, don't worry about anything else. Work hard from now on." Lisanna was even more direct. She walked out of the bar and pushed Noah's back, pushing Noah in the direction of the stairs. "You've been busy in Edras for so long. Big brother Noah, you haven't had much rest. Have a good rest today. Work hard from tomorrow onwards." Wait. Noah could only say gloomily as he was pushed away by Lisanna. "At least tell me what it is." All right. Lisanna ignored Noah's protests and pushed Noah back into the room with a domineering look. "Anyway, big brother Noah, have a good rest first." "That's right." Thus, Noah could only return to the room with a belly full of questions. After returning to the room, Noah lay on the bed with a gloomy expression. What's going on? From the reactions of Makarov, Kildas, Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna, it seemed that something would happen in the guild soon. And this matter seemed to have something to do with the S-rank sorcerer. What does it have to do with the S-rank sorcerer? Noah frowned thoughtfully. "I keep feeling that there is such a thing, but I can't remember." This could not be blamed on Noah. After all, just as Alusha said, Noah had already left Fairy Tale for more than 6 years. He had only returned to the guild for less than half a year. Of that time, he had spent a month in another world. But because of the difference in time, it seemed like a month to others, but to Noah, it was more than half a year. Chapter 1109. A mysterious blue light bloomed from Noah's back, illuminating the entire surrounding space. In the blue light, on Noah's back, the complicated and mysterious characters that were originally engraved around the fire-like pattern began to float, and as if they had gained life, they constantly rotated, jumped, and even changed. What Noah needed to do was to absorb the experience points accumulated from the previous battles into his body, which was filled with divine power. Then, he would use the divine power to draw out the experience points and turn them into actual nourishment, changing them into ability points, and increasing the extent of his ability points. Over time, the mysterious characters that were rotating, jumping, and even changing on Noah's back gradually changed, and one by one, they lined up and returned to Noah's back, engraved on it. Not long after, most of the mysterious characters around the fire-like pattern that was originally engraved on Noah's back changed. If Noah could see his back, he would be surprised. Because there were suddenly a lot more sacred characters on it. Of course, Noah could not see the ability points on his back. However, perhaps because Noah's ability points were updated by himself, when the blue light on Noah's back gradually disappeared, a burst of information suddenly came from the ability points on Noah's back and rushed into Noah's mind. This burst of information recorded the information of Noah's ability points that had been updated at this moment. When Noah received this burst of information and knew the status of his ability points, Noah immediately opened his eyes. His eyes were full of astonishment. Noah Dole LV. First strength, A, 846, S, 966, durability, A, 868, S, 976, dexterity, A, 855, S, 970, agility, A, 873, S. 985, Magic, A. 842, S. 959, Mystery, H.G. Magic, I.H. Swordsman, I.H. Magic, Weapon Refining, Steel Making Magic. Copy, refine, and forge weapons. Replicated, refined, and forged weapons will be weakened to a certain extent depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Replicating, refining, and forging weapons will depend on the weapon's level, performance, and ability to maintain the weapon for a certain period of time. Protection of the sword. Resident magic. Obtain permanent protection according to the attributes of the contracted spirit. Contract a sword spirit as a sword spirit. Obtain the sword spirit's protection and weaken physical attacks. The degree of weakening depends on the strength and ability of the target. Cold smelting, quick attack magic gradually turn the target into steel. Once the tempering is successful, it will be crushed. The tempering speed depends on the strength and ability of the target. Skills, protection from the world, it was a permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. A large amount of information filled Noah's mind. After understanding the situation of his ability value, Noah's face was full of shock. After a while, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I didn't expect that my magic would be discovered. Those who had received the grace of God had also received the grace of magic from the very beginning. In the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, magic was originally something that only magic races who were born with the talent to practice magic could possess. Humans and most other races were unable to receive the favor of magic. However, God's favor allowed everyone to receive equal treatment in magic. To say that it was equal treatment in magic was not the right way to put it. Because, even if one received God's favor, if the possibility of receiving it was too low, then even if one was qualified to learn magic, if the possibility of awakening magic in one's body could not be awakened, then it would just be an empty bar, and one would not be able to discover their own magic for the rest of their life. But on the other hand, as long as there was an empty bar, then no matter who it was, they could discover their own magic and obtain the power of magic. As for the empty bar, those who received God's favor could at least get one, and at most 3. Noah had the most 3, and he had 3 empty bars. Now, these 3 empty slots were all filled up. How could Noah not be shocked? But, immediately after, Noah did not know whether to laugh or cry. There was no other reason. The 3 magic that he discovered were all elven magic from the world of elven sword dance. Hesti once said that the discovery of magic is the same as the discovery of skills. It is based on a person's experience, nature, interests, and wishes, and various other reasons to awaken it. Noah sighed. It seems that my contract with Ashtar, and thus I obtained the ability to learn and use elven magic with the steel attribute, was excavated by God's favor and treated as magic. You discovered it, right? Originally, if one wanted to learn elven magic, they would need to go through systematic learning and practice, and they would need to have a certain level of talent to be able to learn elven magic. But now, because of God's favor, Noah directly skipped the learning and practice stage, and was forced to discover 3 elven magic, and these 3 elven magic became magic that he obtained with the help of his ability points. What's more, there's a low-level, mid-level, and high-level magic spell each. Elven magic was also divided into levels. Among the 3 spells that Noah had discovered, there was a low-level, mid-level, and high-level elven magic spell each. Among them, the low-level elven magic was weapon refinement. This elven magic was one of the basic elven magic that could be learned after contracting with a steel attribute sword spirit. It could only copy, refine, and forge ordinary weapons, so that the elven user would not be able to fight empty-handed. It could not copy, refine, or forge elven equipment, so the elven magic was of the lowest level. The medium-level elven magic was sword protection. This elven magic was somewhat practical. It could determine the strength of the protection depending on the level of the contracted spirit and the amount of divine energy. Once this magic was used, it could weaken physical attacks to a certain extent, which was very good. As for the high-level elven magic, it was cold smelt. This elven magic, when Noah contracted with Aster, in order to get rid of Noah, Aster used it in the form of a sword. At that time, if it was not for Noah's curse resistance, one of his arms would have already turned into steel. Presumably, if it was a normal elven user who was subjected to this magic, they would definitely turn into cold steel in a short period of time, right? However, this powerful magic had a fatal flaw. That was, it had to come into contact with the target in order to be effective. For Noah, with such a restriction, it would be better to just directly open the gate of Babylon, and use the violent force of his noble artifact to get rid of the enemy. As for the weapon refinement, it could only copy, refine, and forge ordinary weapons. It could not even create elven equipment. In the hands of Noah, who had an endless supply of noble artifacts, it was simply a chicken rib of chicken ribs. Therefore, among the three magic, the sword protection was actually a bit useful to Noah. Originally, Noah's curse resistance was already quite high, so normal people could only use physical attacks to deal with Noah. Now, with the addition of the sword protection that could weaken physical attacks, Noah was really starting to walk on the path of invincibility. However, it seems that because of the magic found in the grace, these elven magic seemed to have some changes. Noah pondered over the feedback of the ability value. After pondering for a while, he nodded. Let's try out the icy smelting first. After making up his mind, Noah immediately wanted to find something to try. However, in the next moment, something that Noah did not expect happened. Just as Noah uttered the words, icy smelting, in the direction that Noah was looking at, a vase placed on the windowsill suddenly trembled. In the next second, the vase turned into heavy, ice-cold steel. Under the sunlight, it reflected a cold arc. Seeing this, Noah was stunned, then immediately, his eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 11:10. Looking at the vase that suddenly turned into cold steel without any warning, Noah's eyes lit up. He quickly got up, went to the window, and picked up the vase. The heavy and cold feeling in his hands told Noah that the vase had indeed turned into steel. Without a doubt, the reason why the vase suddenly turned into steel could only be because Noah had activated icy smelting. But, I didn't touch the vase at all. I just looked at it unintentionally. Feeling the heavy and cold feeling of the vase in his hands, Noah's heart settled. He turned his head and looked at the other vase at the head of the bed. Normally, when magic was discovered, the incantation needed to activate the magic would also be displayed. However, Noah's icy smelting did not display the incantation. Instead, it was marked with the words, quick attack magic. This proved that this magic did not need an incantation and could be activated in an instant. Then, in this case, without an incantation, what was the trigger for this magic to be activated? This, Noah also did not know. However, just now, Noah did intend to activate icy smelting to test the power of this high-level elven magic. In other words, the trigger for this magic to be activated came from Noah's own will. In other words, if he wanted to activate it, he would immediately activate it. At this moment, Noah took a deep breath and looked at the vase at the head of the bed. This moment, Noah's dark and deep pupils suddenly turned into a cold silver-white color, flashing with a crystal-like light. Gotcha! At the same time, on the vase that Noah was looking at, a crisp sound that sounded like ice being frozen faintly sounded. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. In the next moment, in the midst of the sound of ice, the vase gradually turned into cold steel starting from the base. Not long after, it was completely covered by steel. The silver-white pupils that were flashing with a crystal-like light slowly returned to the deep and calm darkness of an ancient well. However, that did not stop Noah from feeling excited. Under the situation of being discovered as a magic by grace, the cold smelting that originally required physical contact to be effective was actually effective by just casting one's gaze. Wasn't this the steel version of the demon eye of petrification? I thought this spell wouldn't be very practical. Now, I have to change my mind. Noah glanced at the vase that had turned into cold steel, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! The vase, which had turned into cold steel, suddenly exploded into pieces and fell to the ground. This was the other effect of cold smelting. As long as it was successfully tempered, it could shatter the tempered part at any time. Noah could already imagine how desperate his enemies would be in the face of this spell. However, the speed of tempering depends on the opponent's strength and ability. The stronger the opponent, the slower the tempering speed. Even so, Noah was not disappointed. I wonder if there are any changes to the other two spells. Thinking of this, Noah put the other tempered vase back on the windowsill and removed the tempering effect. Thus, the lifeless steel vase that was just a second ago returned to its original state. After doing this, Noah sat back on the bed and stretched out a hand. Cold smelting was a quick attack spell. It did not require an incantation and could be activated in an instant by relying on Noah's will. The sword's protection was a permanent spell. It did not need to be activated. From the moment the spell was cast, it would always be in effect. It would only take effect when Noah was under physical attack, weakening the physical attack that Noah was under. Only weapon refinement was not a quick attack spell nor a permanent spell. It also did not require an incantation. Then, what was the trigger to activate this spell? Noah seemed to understand the method as if he was enlightened. He focused his mind. At this time, in Noah's mind, the image of a sword gradually emerged. Clang! Almost at the same time, in Noah's outstretched hand, a dazzling light bloomed. The light gradually swelled and slowly elongated into the shape of a sword. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, and the light immediately dissipated into specks of light. However, a sword appeared in Noah's hand out of thin air. That sword was exactly the same as the image that appeared in Noah's mind. And this sword, the body of the sword was silver, the blade was gold, and the hilt was dark blue. The whole body of the sword was flowing with a bright golden light. Impressively, it was the Excalibur. Tightly holding the sacred sword that he created, Noah's expression was half happy and half worried. Noah was overjoyed because he sensed a power and aura from the copied holy sword that an ordinary weapon definitely didn't have. This sacred sword was definitely not an empty shell. It even had the power of its original form. At this point, Noah was finally sure. The low-level elven magic called weapon refinement was not only able to copy, refine, and forge ordinary weapons. This magic could even create treasures, elven equipment, and magical weapons that belonged to the category of weapons. How could Noah not be happy? But he was worried because the sacred sword that Noah created did not have the same power as a real sacred sword. Its level has dropped by at least one level. Noah silently felt the power of the sacred sword in his hand. It is equivalent to a grade B++. Moreover, it can only be maintained for about 10 minutes. Thinking of this, the image of the sacred sword in Noah's mind slowly disappeared. The sacred sword that was quietly lying in Noah's hand suddenly followed the image in Noah's mind and gradually disappeared into thin air. Clang! However, in the next moment, another ray of light bloomed in Noah's hand. However, this time, the ray of light bloomed on Noah's entire arm and condensed into form. When the ray of light dissipated, a pair of gauntlets appeared on Noah's hand. A pair of ferocious dragon claws, with a green jade gauntlet on the back of the gauntlet. It was the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Even the sacred gear can be created. Noah closed his eyes and felt the power of the gauntlet. However, the multiplier effect can only be stacked 5 times at most. The duration is also only 10 minutes. I can't use the balance breaker either. The power is also weakened. Letting the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear disappear along with the image in his mind, Noah's mind was once again filled with the image of a pair of beautiful light wings. A ray of light flashed behind Noah's back and turned into a pair of white wings that seemed to have been carefully made. The surface of the wings was like a light film that flashed with a faint blue light. Other than the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, that was opposite to the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, what else was there? The halved effect can only be stacked 5 times at most. The duration is still 10 minutes, and I can't use the balance breaker either. In just a moment, Noah knew the limitations of the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing. However, as long as it is in the category of a weapon, it can be created. This, I understand. Other than that, Noah also understood another thing. That was, unlike the icy smelting, the reason why the weapon refinement, magic was able to replicate and create weapons with power, such as noble artifacts, elven devices, and magical weapons was not because it was discovered as magic by the grace. The reason why the weapon refinement had such a huge change was because of one of Noah's development abilities that had not been used until now. Mystery. This development ability that could allow people to create miracles like God was the reason why the weapon refinement had such a huge change. I still need to continue exploring. For a moment, Noah was immersed in trying out the new power that he had obtained. Chapter 11:11. After the 3 magic slots were filled, Noah also found some time to familiarize himself with the 3 spells, weapon refinement, swords protection, and icy smelting. In elven magic, these 3 spells were respectively ranked as low, medium, and high. After being discovered as magic by Noah's favor, these 3 spells were improved by more than one level in terms of power, level, and practicality. For example, the spell, weapon refinement, could only be used to create normal weapons. Even the elven device could not create the most basic elven magic of the steel attribute. Most elven users would only use this spell as an introductory practice for elven magic. Not many would actually use this low-level elven magic in battle. However, with the support of mystery, this low-level elven magic spell was completely transformed. It was not just normal weapons. As long as it belonged to the category of weapons, then, no matter if it was a noble artifact, an elven device, or a magical weapon, with weapon refinement, it could be created. Although there were thousands of noble artifacts in Noah's treasure vault, if the level of the weapon created by weapon refinement was too high, then there would be issues with level weakening and maintenance time. It seemed to be very useless, but Noah only had noble artifacts. Like Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, and White Dragon Emperor's light wings, Noah did not have any of those. To be able to use weapon refinement to create these sacred gear, even if there were still issues with level weakening and maintenance time, but to be able to use the power of these sacred gear, it was still a gain. Not to mention, Noah still had many worlds that he had not been to. Who knew if there would be more interesting weapons in those worlds? Therefore, the weapon refinement spell was still quite useful. As for the swords protection spell that could weaken physical attacks against Noah, it was also quite useful for Noah, who had the curse resistance and was immune to most mystical powers. As for icy smelting, this steel version of the Eye of Petrification did not need to be mentioned. The only weakness of these 3 spells was that they consumed a lot of mana. Don't forget, it was different from normal magic. The magic in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the dungeon was rather traditional magic. When used, it consumed mana converted from mental strength. Noah's magic power was endless. However, spiritual power was a different story. Of course, Thanks to Noah's extraordinary soul, coupled with the specialization of the daybreak star pattern, that could strengthen the mind in the world of absolute dual blades, Noah's mind power could be considered terrifying compared to ordinary people. But naturally, it could not be compared to magic power, and divine power, which could be said to be endless. Therefore, this was still a problem. Furthermore, each of the 3 spells had their own limitations. For example, the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, and White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, that were created through weapon refinement, could double the strength and reduce the strength 5 times each. However, the limitation of being able to double and reduce the strength once every 10 seconds meant that they were destined to be very limited in actual combat. Similarly, although icy smelting could turn people into steel in an instant, even if only a part of the body was turned into steel, Noah could directly crush that part of the steel, causing great damage to the enemy. It seemed very terrifying, but there were other ways to resist it. Just like in the world of the shaped moon, perhaps the enemy's power was too strong, so it could weaken the effect of this spell to a certain extent, or even make it ineffective. Therefore, among the 3 spells, only the Sword's Protection spell did not have so many restrictions. In general, the extent of the power of these 3 spells depended on how Noah used them. Although for the current Noah, adding 3 more spells wouldn't increase his strength by too much, Linley thought to himself, that's right. After all, it was only 3 spells. After spending some time familiarizing himself with these 3 spells, Noah began his busy life. To be more precise, it was under the supervision of Mira, Lisanna, and the others that he lived a busy life. I'm back. After coming in from outside, Noah slowly exhaled and greeted his companions in the guild. Big brother Noah, welcome back. Lisanna, who was busy at the bar, immediately put down what she was doing and took out a thick stack of papers from the bar counter. She smiled sweetly in front of Noah. Is the work done? Yes. Noah nodded. It's not very difficult work, I've already finished it. Is that so? Lisanna nodded thoughtfully, then took out a piece of paper from the stack of papers in her arms and handed it to Noah with a smile. Then, the next job is this. More? Noah's face was bitter. I've already done 3 missions today. Well, those 3 missions are just a piece of cake for Big Brother Noah. Why don't you do more? Lisanna looked as if she was worried about her husband's career. After stuffing the commission into Noah's arms, she pushed Noah out. Anyway, Big Brother Noah doesn't look tired at all. There's nothing to do in the guild anyway, so work harder. Yes, yes, yes. Noah could only helplessly take the commission and leave the guild under Lisanna's smiling gaze. Mira, who was also busy at the bar counter, smiled knowingly. The rest of the companions looked at each other. Why does it feel like Noah has been working recently? Lucy asked curiously. Could it be that Noah is short on money? Who knows? Gray crossed his arms and teased. Maybe he's planning to collect money for a wedding. That's hard to say. Wedding. When she found that her friends were looking at her strangely, she coughed awkwardly and pretended to be serious and said, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Unfortunately, this time, you guessed wrong. Noah is busy with work because of something very important. Something very important. Naz, who was gnawing on a drumstick, turned his head while eating. What's the matter? Have you all forgotten? Alusha frowned and reminded them. This year's that one is coming again. That one. Naz and Gray were stunned together. Then, they thought of something and their faces changed. They got up abruptly and screamed. Oh, 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 oh. I forgot. Suddenly, both Naz and Gray rushed to the notice board with amazing momentum. They tore off a commission order and rushed to the front of the bar counter. Mira. I want to take this mission. Me too. I'll take this. Yes. Myra's smile was still gentle. Please take care. So, Naz and Gray rushed out and almost bumped into Wendy, who had just come in from outside and was still holding Xiao Lulu in her arms. Wendy was shocked. The fuss of Naz and Gray seemed to have attracted the attention of the rest of the members in the guild. After a while, the entire guild became lively. It seems that Naz and Gray have finally started to go crazy. With Noah, this year should be very interesting, right? We can't lose. Yeah. In conversations similar to the above, some people continued to talk and laugh, while others, like Naz and Gray, rushed to the mission board where the commission order was posted, and it became crowded. Seeing this scene, Wendy and Lucy were puzzled. Seeing Wendy and Lucy's puzzled look, Alusha smiled. Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. Just look forward to it first. Wendy and Lucy looked at each other and could only nod their heads. In the corner of the guild, Kana, who was holding a wine barrel, was looking in the direction of the mission board with a gloomy face. Chapter 11-12. As the entire fairy tale fell into an unprecedented situation, or perhaps it could be said to be as lively and noisy as ever, in the following period of time, many sorcerers in the guild, including Noah, began to crazily complete quests. For example, Naz, Gray, Elfman, and even Lebby, the first-rate members and potential members of Fairy Tale, had recently vented all their passion and time on missions. On the other hand, Makeo, Wakaba, Wendy, Lucy, and the rest of the Fairy Tale veterans and rookies were the same as before. They still did what they were supposed to do. At most, they would complain about Naz, Gray, and the others making a ruckus. As for the S-rank magic shooters like Alyssa, Mira, Kildas, and the rest of the Fairy Tale S-rank magic shooters, it was as if they were looking at their former selves. They silently watched the crowd fall into a frenzy for the sake of the mission, and from time to time, they would smile knowingly. Only Lisanna seemed to have really become Noah's housekeeper. Whenever Noah went out to do missions, she would help Noah find missions of good difficulty and reward in advance. When Noah returned, she would hand those missions over to Noah, becoming the standard virtuous wife. It wasn't just Lisanna. Even Mira would sometimes pay special attention to Noah's mission progress. Just like Lisanna, she looked as if she couldn't wait for Noah to be busier and complete more missions. This made Noah begin to suspect whether the two delicate fiancés really wanted him to raise money for their wedding. Fortunately, Noah had just obtained 3 new magic spells, and was in the experimental and exploratory stage. The accumulation of a large number of tasks also gave Noah a lot of opportunities to practice. Hence, he managed to master the 3 new magic spells like the back of his hand. Seeing that even Naz, Gray, Elfman, and Lebby had fallen into a vortex of crazily completing missions, Noah's curiosity towards that so-called thing in his heart grew and he actually began to look forward to it. This kind of life was maintained for quite a long time. It ended abruptly as well. On this day, Noah had yet to wake up when the door to his room was gently opened. As expected, he's still not up yet. Mira walked in from outside the door and looked at Noah, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. She smiled gently and deliberately slowed down her footsteps and quietly walked into the room. In fact, Mira knew that even if she didn't deliberately go easy on him, Noah still wouldn't wake up. Although she didn't know the existence of Noah's sensory ability, she knew that if someone approached Noah with hostility, malice, or killing intent, they would definitely wake Noah up in an instant. On the contrary, Noah had been sleeping on the same bed as Mira and Lisanna, who couldn't be any more familiar with him. Unless they deliberately made a sound, Noah would be at ease and appear unguarded. Coming to the bedside, Mira was just about to wake Noah up when she suddenly thought of something and gently lifted Noah's blanket. On top of Noah's body, a young elf girl with long silver hair that reached her waist was hugging Noah's neck. She was also in a state of deep sleep and seemed to be very peaceful. Mira was already used to this and only muttered in a slightly reproachful voice. At least, you should let Aster wear clothes, right? Almost every morning, Aster would remove his sword form and transform back into his human form, burrowing into Noah's bed under the pretext of accompanying him to sleep. If it weren't for the recent missions, either Mira or Lisanna would wake Noah up in the morning. When Aster woke up, he would definitely have the mission of waking Noah up. Moreover, he would do it in a way that would make Mira and Lisanna envious. But recently, this mission had been taken over by Mira and Lisanna. Even Wendy couldn't get in on it, much to Aster's dissatisfaction. Moreover, Aster was someone who got jealous easily and had rich feelings that were far from what he appeared to be on the surface. Recently, he had been at loggerheads with Noah quite a bit. Of course, in the eyes of others, Aster's loggerheads were all kinds of cute. That was why even Lisanna couldn't bring herself to hate Aster, let alone the gentle and kind Mira. On the contrary, she liked the petite and cute Aster and almost raised her as her own daughter. Mira stroked Aster's head lightly, then looked at Noah and shook his body. Noah, it's time to wake up. Noah's brows were clearly furrowed, but he didn't wake up. Instead, he slept even more soundly. Don't sleep, Noah. Mira could only increase her strength. Today is a very important day. You can't sleep anymore. Ugh. Noah finally let out a groggy sound. His eyelids fluttered a few times, but in the end, he didn't wake up. Seriously, Mira said helplessly. If you don't wake up soon, I'm going to do something bad. With that, Mira looked at Noah's lips. Her eyes flickered a few times, and she couldn't help but kiss them lightly. However, before Mira could leave Noah's lips, one of Noah's hands suddenly reached out and grabbed Mira's slender waist. In turn, he pried open Mira's teeth and captured her lips and tongue. Ugh! Mira didn't know what to do and subconsciously struggled. After a while, she stopped and closed her eyes, passively accepting Noah's domineering kiss. After an unknown amount of time, Noah and Mira's lips finally parted slowly. Ha! Mira couldn't help but gasp. Then, she saw Noah's slightly mischievous gaze and smile. How was he as muddle-headed as before? Noah had clearly woken up a long time ago and was purposely messing with Mira. Realizing this, Mira puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. Noah, you've become naughty. Is that so? Looking at Mira's cute puffed-up cheeks, Noah couldn't help but reach out and pinch Mira's nose. Then, do you like it? I hate it the most. Mira rolled her eyes at Noah. Then, she knocked on Noah's chest. Hurry up and let go. Now. Noah blinked. Can't we stay like this for a while longer? No, Mira reached out her finger and tapped Noah's nose. The anger on her face turned back to her usual gentleness. If you don't let go, someone is going to get angry. After saying this, a cold gaze landed on Noah. Noah's eyelids twitched. He stiffened his neck and looked to the side. There, Aster looked at Noah without saying a word. His entire body was filled with an indescribable boldness. That boldness was all transformed from anger. Because, in order to tease Mira, Noah squeezed the sleeping Aster out when he hugged Mira. While this woke Aster up, it also made him angry. Master. Aster stared at Noah expressionlessly. I was squeezed out. That. Noah laughed dryly. I didn't do it on purpose, Master. Aster still stared at Noah expressionlessly. I was squeezed out. Ah. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched as he said resentfully. That's why I didn't do it on purpose, Master. Aster interrupted Noah's explanation and stared at Noah. I was squeezed out. Okay. Noah could only helplessly lower his head. It's my fault, Aster. Forgive me. Only then did Aster's cold expression slightly ease up, making Mira unable to restrain a smile. Aster glanced at Mira. Then, he hugged Noah's neck and declared, "This is my master. I won't steal Aster's master." Mira smiled. She extended her hand and gently stroked Aster's head. "However, Noah belongs to all of us. You can't monopolize him." At that moment, even Aster couldn't resist Mira's gentle aura. He was speechless. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that there was finally someone who could control this slightly willful sword spirit. Chapter 11:13. After playing around for a while, Aster transformed back into the form of a small sword and was pinned to the back of Noah's waist. By the way, under Mira's service, Noah obediently allowed Mira to help him put on his clothes like a newlywed wife. Suddenly, he recalled Mira's words. Lowering his head, he looked at Mira, who was helping him tidy up his collar, and said, "You just said that today is a very important day. What day is it? Do you want to know?" Mira didn't even raise her head. She still helped Noah tidy up his clothes and smiled slightly. "When you go down, you will know." Go down. Noah was a little curious. Did anything happen? "It's a good thing," Mira said with a smile. "Soon, you will know that the hard work during this period of time is worth it." Listening to Mira's words that seemed to be pretending to be mysterious and deliberately whetting his appetite, Noah could only shrug, but he was looking forward to it in his heart. No matter what, during this period of time, Noah did work hard to complete a lot of commissions, so much so that he earned about 10 million in remuneration alone. If the result of such hard work couldn't be exchanged for a sufficient surprise, it would be too disappointing, wouldn't it? After dressing and washing up, Noah took Mira downstairs and came to the guild hall on the first floor. As soon as he stepped into the guild hall, many people turned their attention to Noah. Coming. Nazi looked particularly excited. His eyes looking at Noah were even full of fighting spirit. "Very good, I'm burning. You're the only one left, Noah." Gray's mood seemed to be much higher than before, and he grinned at Noah. Sure enough, only this time is exciting. In addition to Naz and Gray, Lucy, who was on the side, had a puzzled look on her face. She almost had the word "what" engraved on her face. As for Alusha, it was rare that she was not present. Wendy was the only one who trotted to Noah with small steps. She raised her head and gave Noah a cheerful smile. "Good morning, Brother Noah." "Good morning, Wendy." Noah reached out and patted Wendy's head out of habit. "You're very energetic today too." "Yes." Wendy nodded her head heavily. Her mood was much better than before. Because everyone in the guild seems to be very excited today. Noah only noticed it after Wendy mentioned it. At this very moment, almost all the sorcerers of Fairy Tale were gathered in one place. They did not go out to work, nor did they eat and drink, nor did they chat. Instead, they were gathered together, restless as they discussed something. In the Fairy Tale, there was a stage that looked like a stage. Now, the stage was covered by a curtain, as if there was some kind of program being prepared. A group of sorcerers from Fairy Tale were gathered in front of the stage. Looking at the stage covered by the curtain and the scene of his companions gathering together, Noah could not help but stare blankly. What's going on? As soon as his voice fell, a clear voice responded to Noah's question. Later, the chairman will have something important to announce. As she said this, Lisanna appeared behind Noah without anyone noticing. She jumped onto Noah's back and hugged his neck. "Good morning, Brother Noah." "Good morning, Lisanna." Noah could not hide his curiosity as he asked. "Is it related to the work you've been doing for me all this time?" "Of course." Lisanna pressed her cheek against Noah's cheek. Her intimate appearance made Wendy extremely envious. Big brother Noah, you will soon know that your efforts during this period of time were definitely not in vain. Noah nodded expectantly, causing Mira, who was beside him, to grin. Then, you guys chat first. I have to go and prepare. After saying this, she did not give Noah time to react and directly left in the direction of the stage. Oh, right. Noah looked around. Why don't I see Alusha? Now that you mention it, brother Noah. Wendy looked around the room. Indeed, I don't see Miss Alusha. It's not just Alusha, Kildas is not here either. Lisanna jumped down from Noah's back and came to Noah's side with a sweet smile. But later, all the S-rank magic shooters in the guild will be gathered. All of them. Noah raised an eyebrow. It seemed that something important was going to happen today. As time passed, the atmosphere in the guild became more and more lively. Noah, Lisanna, and Wendy chatted intermittently. It was rare for them to be so relaxed. Until a certain moment, an old but powerful voice resounded throughout the entire guild. Everyone! Be quiet! Along with this voice, all the magic shooters in the guild quivered and quietened down. Noah also raised his head and looked in the direction of the stage. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, the curtain on the high platform slowly rose. In the next moment, a few figures appeared on the stage one after another. The one in the lead was naturally Makarov. Behind Makarov, 4 figures stood side by side. Alusha, Mira, Kildas. The 3 active S-rank magic shooters belonging to Fairy Tale were led by Makarov, the guild's president, and lined up behind him. In addition to Alusha, Mira, and Kildas, there was one more person. A person who surprised everyone present. Noah, in particular, almost subconsciously cried out in surprise. Laxus. Impressively, it was the president of Fairy Tale, the grandson of Makarov, one of the 10 Saint Magi, and Noah's sworn brother, Laxus Doria. Laxus. Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others were shocked. Even Lisanna didn't seem to know that Laxus would appear here and exclaimed, "Why is he here?" Oh. Wendy looked at Laxus's fierce face and somewhat shrunk behind Noah's back. It feels a little scary. On the other hand, Laxus ignored the noise of the crowd and cast his gaze on Noah with a somewhat violent smile on his face. Looks like you've been doing well recently. You. Noah was startled. Why are you here? Why what? Laxus crossed his arms and closed his eyes. I just came back. Wasn't the time set by you? I said it. Noah frowned at first, then finally remembered. Last time, because of the trouble Laxus had caused, when Makarov had planned to expel Laxus from the guild, Noah had protected Laxus in the name of the next president. It was only a symbolic punishment of confinement for a period of time. Now that he thought about it carefully, it seemed that the confinement time had indeed come. As soon as I was released, I was caught by Grandpa, Laxus said to Noah as if he found it troublesome, but also as if he was eager to give it a try. But this is good too. If you want to become an S-rank archmage, let me be your obstacle. S-rank archmage. Noah raised an eyebrow. Seeing that the atmosphere between Noah and Laxus was no longer as dangerous as before, Makarov was happy in his heart. At the same time, he coughed dryly, looked at everyone below the high platform, and said in a clear voice. According to the rules of Fairy Tale since ancient times, now, I will announce the list of candidates for the S-rank Archmage promotion exam. The whole audience suddenly went silent. Oh! In the next second, deafening cheers resounded throughout Fairy Tale. S-rank Archmage promotion exam. Lucy, Wendy, and the others who had just joined the guild were completely shocked. Not to mention Lucy and Wendy, even Noah had a look of amazement on his face. S-Rank Archmage Promotion Exam. Has it already reached this stage? Chapter 11-14. The S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. As the name implied, it was a test that would allow those who passed to be promoted to the highest rank in the guild, S-Rank. In Fairy Tail, there were only 4 S-Rank magic shooters in active service. Elusha, Mira, Kildas, and Laxus, a total of 4. Every single one of these 4 people possessed extremely powerful strength. Among them, Kildas and Laxus even had the ability to become one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Elusha was also not far from becoming one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Even Mira had strength that the other magic shooters in Fairy Tail did not have, and there was no need to doubt her battle prowess. Becoming an S-Rank magic shooter meant that one would be on the same level as the 4 of them. In addition, becoming an S-Rank magic shooter meant standing at the forefront of the entire guild. They could also undertake S-Rank missions, SS-Rank missions, 10-year missions, and even 100-year missions, and other missions with high difficulty and generous rewards. In this way, who wouldn't want to gain both fame and fortune? Other guilds aside, in Fairy Tail, every year there would be an S-Rank magic shooter advancement test. There was no limit to the number of candidates, the venue was not fixed, and the content was unknown. It would only be announced after the list of candidates for the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test was finalized. To be selected, one not only needed to have a certain amount of strength, but also a certain amount of experience, as well as the approval of the guild leader and the guild members. Why did Mira and Lisanna let Noah spend all his time on work during this period? It was to let Noah have enough experience to qualify for the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test. I see. Noah glanced at the smiling Lisanna and said helplessly. So they made me work so hard for the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test. It was impossible for Noah, who had grown up in Fairy Tail, to not know about the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test. However, after being away for so long, Noah had long forgotten that the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test was held every year at this time. That was why he hadn't reacted to it. Now that he understood what was going on, Noah's eyes could not help but flash with some excitement. As mentioned before, Noah would sooner or later take over the position of Fairy Tail's guild leader. He would inherit the guild from Makarov and protect this place that was equivalent to Noah's home. As for the previous 3 presidents of Fairy Tail, almost all of them were famous figures. If Noah were to become the 4th guild leader, he could not let his position fall. That was why Noah's initial goal was to become an S-Rank magic shooter. Now, the moment had finally arrived. Even Noah couldn't help but feel excited. At the same time, Makarov began to announce the list of candidates for the S-Rank magic shooter advancement test. This year, there are a total of 7 magic shooter advancement magic shooters. The magic shooter Mira magic shooter Mira magic shooter magic shooters 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 magic shooter shooters, clank. Suddenly, a curtain of light shot out from the crystal ball and hovered in midair. On the light screen, there were 7 portraits of people. Below each person's portrait, there was a name. Noah Doria. Naz Dolagner. Gray Falpast. Elfman Strauss. Gadgeru Wright Fox. Julianne Rox. Katrina Arapolona. A total of 7 names appeared on the screen together with the portraits of Noah and the other magic shooters, and were imprinted in the eyes of everyone present. That was the list of candidates for this year's S-Rank magic shooter promotion exam. That's great! Naz shouted excitedly. Why am I behind Naz? Gray said with a smile on his face. Be a man. You should become an S-Rank magic shooter. Elfman clenched his fists, unable to hide his excitement. I didn't expect that when I saw that guy busy with work, I couldn't help but get busy as well. I was actually selected. Gadger grinned and glanced in Noah's direction. He was also somewhat excited. Why? Why is Julianne included as well? Julianne also glanced at Noah, but shrunk his head. Just like before, he was still somewhat afraid of Noah. Only Katrina was not too excited, nor did she show any expression. She just closed her eyes, and the atmosphere around her was more or less heavy. Katrina. Lucy looked at Katrina with some worry and secretly decided to have a good chat with Katrina after this. As for Noah, he was deep in thought as he looked at the light screen that displayed the names of the 7 people. Almost all of them are people below S rank in the guild who are active on the front lines. Wasn't that right? Apart from Noah, Naz, Gray, Elfman, Gadgeru, Julianne, and Katrina were all the strongest magic shooters in Fairy Tail apart from the S-rank magic shooters. Noah was not surprised that there was such a group of people who could be selected for the S-rank magic shooter advancement test. Originally, in Laxus's Thor gang, there were 3 people like Freed, Bikesro, and Ibarglin who were at the front lines. If they had worked hard, there should have been 1 or 2 people who could have been selected, Lisanna said with some regret. However, due to Rax's confinement, Freed and the others insisted on accompanying him no matter what. During this period of time, they didn't have any work to do and weren't active enough. That's why they were eliminated. Noah nodded in understanding and cast his gaze on the high platform. There, Makarov raised the crutch in his hand and pointed at the light screen next to him. The selected magic shooters will have a period of preparation time. Before the preparation time is over, everyone must choose a partner in the guild. Partner. Noah's heart skipped a beat. In other words, the S-rank magic shooter advancement test this time is actually a pair of 2. That's right. On the high platform, Alusha nodded and affirmed Noah's words. There are 2 rules for choosing partners. First, you can't choose an S-rank magic shooter as your partner. Second, you must be a magic shooter in the guild. Then, where is the test venue? Gray raised his hand. Where is the test venue? Hearing this, Mira, who was holding the crystal ball in her hand, smiled. This year's test venue is Celestial Wolf Island. Celestial Wolf Island. Everyone suddenly became thoughtful. Celestial Wolf Island. Noah was a little surprised. According to Noah, our guild's first chairman seems to still exist on Celestial Wolf Island. Makarov said in a loud voice. Therefore, this time's test venue was chosen on Celestial Wolf Island to let the first chairman witness the growth of the new generation of Fairy Tail. Do you all understand? Yes. The magic shooters in the guild responded loudly. Perhaps it was precisely because they wanted to let the first chairman of Fairy Tail witness the growth of the new generation in the guild that the candidates for the S-rank magic shooter advancement test this time were the best in the guild in terms of battle prowess. Otherwise, a sorcerer like Levi, who had been working hard recently, should have been able to get 1 or 2 people selected because of her active activities. As for the specific test content, it will be announced after we depart for Celestial Wolf Island. Alusha suddenly smiled. One thing is certain, and that is, in front of you, there is a checkpoint set by us S-rank magic shooters waiting for you to challenge. That's right. This sentence made all the candidates, except for Noah, break out in a cold sweat. Laxus looked at Noah with an imposing smile on his face. I'll be waiting for you on Celestial Wolf Island. Hearing Lax's words, Noah also smiled, not to be outdone. Anytime. At this point, the S-rank magic shooter advancement test officially began. Chapter 11:15. If it's me, of course, it's hubby. Not long after the announcement of the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam, Nazi raised his head and puffed out his chest and shouted. Besides hubby, who else is suitable to be my partner? Love. Hubby was also full of fighting spirit and raised a hand. I will definitely make Nazi an S-rank magic shooter. Is it that easy? Lucy was not optimistic about Nazi. This time, Noah will be taking part in the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam. Yes. Wendy also expressed her own opinion, which was rare for her. Brother Noah is the best. He will definitely become an S-rank magic shooter. That's not necessarily true. Gray glanced at Noah and grinned. The content of the exam is not necessarily a battle. Even if it is a battle, we won't easily admit defeat. That's right. Elfman made a perfect posture to show his muscles. A real man shouldn't admit defeat before the battle even begins. Or rather, I will never lose. Nazi pointed to Noah, who was sitting innocently at the side, and made a declaration. Noah, just you wait. After that, Nazi no longer said anything and ran straight out of the door. Since you have decided, then don't waste time. Hurry up and practice. Love. Hubby flew out without any hesitation. Together with Nazi, they disappeared in the direction of the door in the blink of an eye. That idiot. Gray had a look of contempt on his face. There is not much time left before the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam. How much strength can he gain by practicing at this time? When the time comes, his body will be damaged and he will suffer. Well, that's Nazi's style. Noah smiled. If he is allowed to sit idle in the guild and at home, then his state may weaken. That's true. Lucy couldn't help but smile, and then she looked at Noah curiously. Then, Noah, have you decided on your partner? Do you even need to ask? Gray asked as if he already knew the answer. Since the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam can't choose an active S-rank magic shooter as a partner, without Mira, Noah's partner must be Lysana, right? Ahaha. Wendy laughed in agreement. After all, she is his fiancée. However, when everyone thought that Noah's partner was Lysana, Noah shrugged. Unfortunately, you guessed it. My partner is not Lysana. Not Lysana. Wendy, Lucy, Gray, and the others were stunned. Obviously, no one thought of this possibility. What's wrong? Noah asked. Is it strange that I am not Lysana? That's right, Lysana, who was sitting next to Noah, also protested. It's not like I can only be brother Noah's partner, right? But, isn't this too strange? Lucy said, not surprised. It's fine if it's Noah, but Lysana doesn't want to be Noah's partner. What do you mean it's fine if it's Noah? Lysana puffed up her cheeks and said with some dissatisfaction. Don't make it sound like I can't leave brother Noah, okay? Lysana, who said this, kept sticking to Noah's side, unwilling to leave. It was not persuasive at all. Then, Elfman added this sentence to expose Lysana's identity. Lysana originally wanted to be Noah's partner, but I, as a man, begged her for a long time before she reluctantly agreed to be my partner. Hearing this, the crowd finally understood. Brother Elfman. Lysana glared at Elfman angrily. Why did you expose me? What do you mean by expose? Elfman said matter-of-factly. A man should be upright and honest. But I'm not a man. Lysana almost went crazy. Seeing this, everyone smiled knowingly. Then, they all reacted. Does this mean that Lysana will be Elfman's partner? Lucy looked at Noah curiously. Then, Noah, have you decided on your partner? Yes. Noah nodded and then looked at Wendy, who was sitting on the other side of him. He reached out and put his hand on her head. I've decided that Wendy will be my partner. This time, not only Lucy and Gray, but also Lysana and Elfman were surprised. Me? Wendy herself couldn't help but be startled. When she finally reacted, her eyes widened in an instant, and she was at a loss for what to do. Obviously, she didn't expect Noah to choose her to be his partner. What's wrong? Noah blinked at Wendy. Wendy, Are you not willing to be my partner? Of course not. Wendy answered without thinking. But after a while, she lowered her head and pointed at her fingers. But I'm not as good as everyone else. I can't help Brother Noah at all. That's where you're wrong, Wendy. Noah patted Wendy's head and said, You're a magic shooter of the Dragon Slayer. Even if your battle strength isn't guaranteed, your magic shooter of the Dragon Slayer is the real deal. It can provide support in all aspects, and I don't lack battle strength. With you helping me, I'll be more at ease. Really? Wendy's expression was like the sun after the rain, and she became excited. I understand. I'll do my best to help Brother Noah. Good girl. Noah rubbed Wendy's head dotingly, causing her to blush. But she didn't look unwilling at all. Instead, she looked like she was enjoying it. That's great. Lisanna looked on enviously. I also want to be in Brother Noah's team. Wait, Lisanna. Elfman immediately protested. You've already agreed to be my partner. A man has to keep his word. That's why I'm not a man. Lisanna felt weak all over. Oh, I shouldn't have agreed to it when I saw how pitiful it was that Brother Elfman couldn't find a partner. Hearing that, everyone laughed out loud. Seeing the happy smiles on his companions' faces, Noah smiled as well. His gaze, however, turned to the door and looked at the sky outside. Celestial Wolf Island. To Noah, Celestial Wolf Island wasn't just the holy land of fairy tale and the resting place of the first chairman. It was also a turning point in his life. It was on Celestial Wolf Island that Noah first encountered the world fragment and met the first chairman, Mavis. From then on, he embarked on his journey to various worlds. That was why Celestial Wolf Island was a very special place to Noah. However, when he thought of that island that was like a paradise, Noah didn't know why he felt uneasy. Lisanna, who noticed that something was wrong with Noah, asked curiously. Brother Noah, what's wrong? Lisanna's voice attracted everyone's attention to Noah. What's wrong? Gray deliberately teased. Don't tell me you're nervous. Nervous? Lucy seemed to be amused as she waved her hand. How could Noah be nervous? This time, the person most likely to pass the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam is Noah, right? Even a man will be nervous, Elfman said seriously. If he's nervous, then it proves that Noah is a man. What are you talking about? Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. After hesitating for a while, he frankly told them what was on his mind. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that something will happen in this S-rank advancement test. Something is going to happen? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Aren't you thinking too much? Gray patted Noah's shoulder. Heavenly Wolf Island is our guild's holy land. Aside from our guild members, nobody else knows how to get to the island. Not to mention, you won't be the only one participating in this test. The guild leader, Alyssa, and Mira will be there as well. Even Kildas and Raxus will be there. What could possibly happen? That's right, Wendy said softly. Brother Noah, don't worry. Is that so? Noah nodded casually. I hope so. The absent-minded Noah didn't notice that Kana, who was rarely not hugging a wine bottle or barrel, was looking at him with sparkling eyes. Chapter 11:16. The S-rank magic shooter advancement test would officially begin in a week's time. Before that, there was a whole week's time for the members selected for the S-rank magic shooter advancement test to prepare. This period of time should be used to determine the partners of the selected members. However, in less than a week's time, almost everyone's partners had already been decided. Noah and Wendy were in a group. Naz and Habi were in a group. Elfman and Lisanna were in a group. These three groups were the fastest to decide on their partners. After that, Noah found out who the other people had chosen as partners. First of all, Gadula's partner was Lily. For some reason, ever since Lily joined Fairy Tale, Gadula and Lily had been hanging out together. They even teamed up when they worked, and it was as if they regretted not having met earlier. Therefore, this time, Gadula did not hesitate to choose Lily as his partner. Lily also agreed without any hesitation and officially formed a team. After that, Julian chose Levi as his partner. According to his companions in the guild, ever since he came to Fairy Tale, Julian had been traumatized by Noah's beating. He had chosen to quietly stay in a corner of the guild and did not communicate with anyone. And the one who broke this state was Levi. Levi was the first person in Fairy Tale to strike up a conversation with Julian and become friends with him. Thus, under Levi's lead, Julian gradually began to integrate into the guild. Naturally, Julian chose Levi as his partner, and the kind-hearted Levi did not have any intention of refusing and directly agreed. In the end, Gray's partner was Freed. Due to Lox's confinement, Freed hadn't been very active in the guild recently. As a result, even though he possessed strength comparable to many of the people who had been selected for the S-rank Great Wizard Advancement test, he hadn't been selected. However, even though he was not selected, as a partner, Freed was definitely the best choice. Therefore, Gray specifically sought out Thor Castle and invited Freed to become his partner. Considering that Laxus would also be heading to Skywolf Island, Freed didn't reject Gray's invitation. At this point, apart from Kana, the partners of the other 6 candidates for the S-rank Magic Shooter Advancement test had all been chosen. On the other hand, Elusha, Mira, Kildas, Laxus, and the other active S-rank Archmages went to Skywolf Island first to set up the venue for the S-rank Archmage Advancement test. They even brought Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin there, leaving only the president, Makarov, to wait for a week to pass before bringing the candidates to Skywolf Island. After all, there was a very secretive barrier set up around Celestial Wolf Island that could prevent any magic from detecting its existence. If he wanted to enter Skywolf Island, he could only do so on his feet and rely on his eyes. Therefore, apart from the higher-ups of Fairy Tale who already knew the location of Skywolf Island, the rest didn't know where it was. It was also very necessary for Makarov to stay behind to lead the way. Just as the entire guild was in a lively discussion about the S-rank Magic Shooter Advancement test, Noah walked out of the guild's gate alone. Looking at the distant horizon, his mind became more and more restless. Sure enough, something big will definitely happen on this trip to Skywolf Island. After all, Noah's sixth sense was directly linked to some of the world's wills and hints. It couldn't be more accurate. Since it could make Noah so restless for no reason, then something big was definitely going to happen. Something that even Noah had no choice but to treat seriously. Thinking of this, Noah's pitch-black eyes couldn't help but flicker. What exactly is going to happen? Just as he finished speaking, a voice responded to Noah's words. Do you also think that something will happen on Skywolf Island? Hearing this voice, Noah was startled at first, then he turned his head and looked behind him. What appeared in front of Noah's eyes was a figure that even Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Since you already know what will happen on this trip to Skywolf Island, why did you still bring Wendy along? Spreading out a pair of wings, Xiao Lulu, who was flying in the air, asked Noah in an extremely angry manner. If that's the case, won't Wendy be involved in a very dangerous situation? Hearing this, Noah frowned slightly and looked straight at Xiao Lulu. Do you know what will happen on Skywolf Island? I don't know. Xiao Lulu bit her lip and said rather helplessly. I can only see some very scattered fragments, very bad fragments. Fragments? Noah asked doubtfully. What do you mean? The Queen of the Transcendents should have told you that she has some kind of ability to predict the future, right? Xiao Lulu said. Although I don't know why, I seem to have this ability too. Xiao Lulu's words made Noah's heart skip a beat. I don't know what will happen on Sky Wolf Island, but I can be sure that it won't be anything good. Xiao Lulu's face was tense. Even if that's the case, do you still want to let Wendy go to such a dangerous place? Regardless of whether there is danger on Sky Wolf Island or not, it would be more reassuring to have Wendy by my side, right? Noah relaxed his furrowed brows and looked at Xiao Lulu. Or, if I don't bring Wendy by my side and let you accompany her, do you have a way to ensure that Wendy will be fine if something happens? Xiao Lulu was instantly speechless. Since we've already confirmed that something will happen on Sky Wolf Island, then I have to make this trip. Noah glanced at Xiao Lulu. If you don't feel at ease, then you can come with me. Then let's do this. Xiao Lulu muttered to herself for a while and could only agree helplessly. When the time comes, I'll go with you. After saying this, Xiao Lulu turned around and flew back into the guild. After watching Xiao Lulu leave, Noah was just about to follow her back into the guild when another figure walked out. Noah stopped in his tracks. Kana. Noah's call did not attract Kana's attention. No. It should be said that from the beginning, Kana had been watching Noah and was walking towards Noah. It was obvious that she was coming for Noah. However, what made Noah stop in his tracks was not Kana's approach, but the expression on Kana's face. It was as if she was in a dilemma, as if she was about to say something difficult. It was a very complicated and struggling expression. Noah could not ignore this expression. Thus, Noah stopped in his tracks. Under such circumstances, Kana arrived in front of Noah, but her eyes did not dare to look in his direction. She lowered her head and spoke in a low voice. Noah. Noah, Kana. Noah looked straight at Kana. What's the matter? Kana tightened her arms and spoke with difficulty. Can I ask you for a favor? Go ahead. Noah nodded without hesitation. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely help you. These words made Kana's eyes become gloomy and uncertain. After a while, Kana finally raised her head and looked straight at Noah. Even if I ask you to give up on the S-rank High Mage Advancement exam, will it still be the same? Give up on the S-rank High Mage Advancement exam. Noah froze. I have to become an S-rank High Mage. Kana bit her lips. But if you are here, I feel that I won't have a chance of winning. Thus, Kana could only ask Noah to give up on the S-rank High Mage Advancement exam. Noah understood her meaning. The reason? Noah was silent for a while before speaking. What's the reason? Kana was silent. But Noah could feel the struggle in Kana's heart. After a while, Kana's body suddenly relaxed and she forced a smile. I'm sorry, forget what I just said. Leaving behind these words, Kana returned to the guild without looking back. Looking at Katana's back, Noah's eyebrows furrowed tightly. What was going on? Chapter 11:17. It would be a lie to say that Noah didn't care about Kana's abnormality. Although she wasn't as close as Alusha and Gray, Kana was Noah's childhood friend. They were partners that grew up together, so how could he not care about Kana's abnormality? Thus, after that, Noah always wanted to talk to Kana again. Who knew, maybe Kana already knew about Noah's plans, but in the following week, she didn't show her face in the guild at all. Noah even went to Kana's place to look for her, but in the end, Kana didn't seem to be at home, so Noah could only give up helplessly. Later, Noah found out that Kana had actually been staying at Lucy's house for the past week. After that, he heard the news that Kana and Lucy had formed a team. With no other choice, Noah could only give up and plan to take one step at a time. After all, other than Kana's matter, Noah still had a lot of things to take care of. For example, after knowing that something big would definitely happen on Heavenly Wolf Island, Noah naturally had to do a lot of investigation and preparation. Another example was because almost all of the elites in Fairy Tale would leave the guild and head to Heavenly Wolf Island, causing Fairy Tale's defense to become unprecedentedly low. Noah also had to check Fairy Tale's defense system. In the past, in order to prevent Fairy Tale from being destroyed by others, Noah had carved many runes into the building materials when the guild was being rebuilt, forming an extremely complete rune magic defense system. This time, in order to be safe, Noah had spent a lot of money. He had spent all of the tens of millions that he had worked hard to earn to buy a large pile of magic crystals with the largest storage capacity. He gave them to Mikhail and Wakaba for them to use when necessary. With such a large amount of magic crystals, even if the Fairy Tale's defensive system remained active, it would still be able to last for nearly 10 years. This way, even if something really happened, as long as Fairy Tale's high mages hid in the guild, their safety would be guaranteed. After doing all this, Noah was more or less relieved. Actually, the best way was to propose to Makarov to cancel the S-rank high mage advancement test. But what was the reason for canceling it? Because Noah's intuition told him that something big was about to happen? Because of Xia Lulu's incomplete foresight ability, she saw some incomplete fragments. Such a weak reason was definitely not enough for Makarov to cancel the guild's most important S-rank high mage advancement test. In addition, Noah believed that rather than cowering and deliberately hiding, it would solve the problem from the root. Thus, in the end, Noah didn't propose to cancel the S-rank high mage advancement test. Just like that, a week's time passed. On the boundless ocean, a ship was braving the wind and waves, sailing straight ahead. Walala. The sound of the waves was incessant. Oh. 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 The cries of the seagulls seemed to have a rhythm that constantly reverberated in the air. The scorching sun sprinkled down from the horizon and shone on the slowly moving ship, causing the air to more or less distort. One could imagine how high the temperature was at this time. Because of the airflow, the temperature here was high all year round. Thus, if one wanted to go to Celestial Wolf Island, it was absolutely unavoidable that they would have to endure the high temperature here for a period of time. Because of this, on the entire deck, almost all of the candidates for the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam in Fairy Tale were wearing swimsuits, looking dispirited. It's so hot. Lisanna complained as she stuck a frozen drink bottle to her face. Why is it still so hot here? In the past, Lisanna had come to Celestial Wolf Island with Noah once. At that time, Lisanna was extremely uncomfortable with the temperature here, let alone this was only her second time here. If even Lisanna was like this, there was no need to talk about the rest. They all seemed to be exhausted, lying down, sitting up, lying down, and falling down. The scene was a mess. In such a high temperature, even Noah had taken off his shirt and was only wearing a pair of pants, causing Wendy and Rachel's cheeks to turn red. They frequently looked in Noah's direction, and couldn't be any more innocent. As for Lucy, she had long been unable to stand the sun. "Gray, can't you think of a way?" Lucy collapsed on the chair like a corpse, her skin covered in sweat. "Aren't you an ice magician? Are you an idiot?" Gray was also covered in sweat, lying on the chair as if he couldn't stand the heat, looking like he was about to die. There's still the most important test coming up. Who would use their precious mana in such a place? By the way, Gray had already taken off all his clothes and was lying there naked. If it were any other time, the ladies would have already made things difficult for him. But now, everyone was so hot that even their heads and vision were blurred. Not to mention that they didn't have the mood to care, even if they wanted to, their blurred vision basically couldn't see Gray's naked body, which allowed Gray to escape the disaster. Fortunately, Naz was now lying on the side and couldn't move because of his sickness from the transportation. Otherwise, if he were to be sprayed with fire by this emotional guy, the temperature would be shocking. Hey, Noah, haven't you been to Celestial Wolf Island before? Rachel leaned on the simple wooden table and said to Noah weakly. How long until we reach Celestial Wolf Island? Don't worry, Noah said with a bitter smile. We're almost there. Bear with it for a while. Hearing this, everyone could only put on a bitter face and continue to bear with the high temperature. Perhaps wanting to divert attention, Lucy asked Noah. What kind of place is Celestial Wolf Island? Chapter 11:18. What is it? At this time, Levi's attention was completely diverted and she was no longer aware of the high temperature. She couldn't wait to ask Noah. What is the secret hidden on Celestial Wolf Island? It wasn't just Levi. In addition to the seasick Naz, even the curiosity of Lisanna, Wendy, Lucy, Kana, Gray, Hubby, and Xiao Lulu was aroused by Noah. Gadjaluk, Julian, Fried, Elfman, and Lily, who had been sitting in the corner without saying anything, turned their gazes and looked straight in Noah's direction. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Noah remained silent for a while, as though he was considering what words he should use to describe the situation. After a while, he said, you should all know about the 3 major spells of fairy tale, right? Including Wendy and Summer Lulu, who had just joined Fairy Tale not long ago, all the sorcerers present nodded in agreement. As long as they were Fairy Tale's archmages, they would definitely know about the 3 major spells of Fairy Tale. After all, it was a legend that everyone in the magic world knew. Even others knew about this matter clearly. As a member of Fairy Tale, it was even more impossible for them not to know. The 3 super spells that were developed by the first president are superior to all ordinary spells. Until now, our guild has only inherited one of them. Noah looked around at everyone. Using the divine light to suppress the darkness, it can target everything that the caster considers to be the enemy and mentally destroy the opponent's super judgment magic, fairy law. Once this super magic is activated, even if the opponent is an entire guild, it can instantly annihilate them. Everyone secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. No one doubted this matter. At least, Naz, Gray, Lucy, Wendy, and the others who had seen the super reversal spell Nirvana firmly believed in this matter. Since the effect of Nirvana could reach such a terrifying level, then it was normal for the fairy law, which was also a super spell, to have such a terrifying effect. Although the others had not seen Nirvana, they had witnessed the power and threat of the super subspace spell Anima with their own eyes. As a super spell, no one doubted the power of the fairy law. While everyone had such thoughts in their hearts, Noah said so. However, the fairy law is only a trial spell after all. Among the 3 major spells of Fairy Tale, there is also the erase spell. In terms of lethality and destructive power, it is far above the fairy law. Erase. Erase spell. Lucy shrunk her neck a little timidly. It sounds very dangerous. Of course it's dangerous. Noah curled his lips and smiled. It can collect and condense the brilliance of the sun, moon, and stars, and turn it into a ruthless light that will not allow the enemy to survive. The super erase spell, Fairy Glitter, that can destroy all enemies. It can even collect the power of the stars. Do you think it's dangerous? Everyone secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva again. Super erase spell. Gray propped himself up and looked at Noah. It can't be comparable to the Council's magic elven power, can it? Everyone suddenly looked at each other in dismay. Magic elven power. Held by the Council, it could gather magic of multiple attributes together and launch it using a satellite magic array. The power was enough to destroy a country's super space-time destruction spell. Because of its terrifying destructive power, this super space-time destruction spell could even become a strategic weapon. It was extremely terrifying. If the super erase spell, Fairy Glitter, could reach that level, then it would be really terrifying. In this regard, Noah could only shake his head. No matter what, it can't reach the level of a strategic weapon. After all, fairy glitter is not a destructive spell, but an erase spell. It doesn't have that much destructive power. Of course, its lethality is definitely not weak. If you were hit by that spell, even if you don't die, you would be crippled for life. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief, but they were also secretly shocked. Even if its destructive power could not be compared to magic elven power, its lethality was still quite terrifying. Then, what does the huge secret hidden in Celestial Wolf Island have to do with this super erase spell, fairy glitter? Lucy hurriedly changed the topic and even joked. It can't be that such a terrifying spell is hidden on Celestial Wolf Island. Lucy's words made her companions around her smile knowingly. However, Noah looked at Lucy silently and did not say a word. Seeing this, everyone was silent. It can't be. Lucy's mouth twitched. That so-called secret, is it really the fairy glitter? You guessed right. Noah sighed and said seriously. The secret hidden on Celestial Wolf Island is the fairy glitter. That super erase spell is now hidden on Celestial Wolf Island. After receiving Noah's affirmation, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Why do we have to deal with such a terrifying spell again? Lucy almost cried. First, it was the super reversal magic, Nirvana. Then, it was the super subspace magic, Anima. Now, it's such a terrifying super obliteration magic. Why have we been dealing with super magic that humans shouldn't possess recently? Just as Lucy finished speaking, an aged voice rang out. What is truly terrifying is not magic, but the human heart. Saying this, Makarov walked over from the other side of the deck. As long as you yearn for the light, then, no matter how terrifying the magic is, it will become your wealth. President. Everyone stood up in unison. The reason why the first president, Mavis Viamilio, developed the three great spells was not to make them the object of fear in your hearts, but to illuminate the path ahead of you. Makarov's gaze swept across everyone. That's why there's no need to be afraid. No matter how frightening the ultimate erasure magic is, it will always erase the enemies that threaten you. It's precisely in order to protect the guild and its companions from all sorts of enemies that the first generation created the three great ultimate spells. I hope you won't forget this. Makarov's words were like a ray of light, sweeping away the darkness in everyone's hearts. Then, Makarov changed the topic and pointed to the front. Look, we have arrived at our guild's holy land, Celestial Wolf Island. Hearing this, everyone turned their heads in unison and looked forward. Only to see, at the far end of the sea, a strange island slowly appeared in everyone's eyes. It was an island that seemed to be made up of two islands, one big and one small, stacked together, with a towering tree in the middle of the island. Is that Celestial Wolf Island? Everyone's gaze was attracted to the strange island. So powerful. Wendy took a sip of the air and sucked it into her mouth. Even from such a distance, I can still feel the powerful magic in the air. You will be conducting the first stage of the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam on that island, Makarov said. Do you see the smoking area on the island? After Makarov mentioned it, everyone noticed. In one of the corners of Celestial Wolf Island, a wisp of green smoke was slowly rising. You will need to go there first. There are 7 paths that have been set up. Each group can only choose one path to advance, Makarov explained. And the 7 paths are like this. Makarov pointed to the side. Whing. Accompanied by a trembling sound, a light screen gradually appeared beside Makarov. Chapter 11:19. What appeared on the light screen and in front of everyone present was a schematic diagram that looked like a map. An entrance was marked at the bottom of the schematic map. That entrance was probably the place where a wisp of green smoke was rising from on Celestial Wolf Island. The entrance was connected to 7 different passageways. Those 7 tunnels, if one walked to the end, would all lead to the exit. However, there was an extremely complicated structure in the middle of the 7 passages. There was a portrait of a person in the middle of each of the 4 passages. It was the portrait of Alusha, Mira, Kildas, and Laxas, the 4 active S-rank magic shooters. The remaining 3 passages converged in the middle to form a single passage. In other words, there were only 5 passages leading to the exit. Looking at this schematic map, Noah more or less understood how the first phase of the S-rank magic shooter advancement test would unfold. As you can see, 4 of the 7 passages leading to the end are already guarded by an active S-rank magic shooter. If you choose these 4 passages and encounter 4 S-rank magic shooters, you must defeat them or gain their recognition before you can proceed to the end smoothly. Under everyone's gaze, Makarov first pointed to the 4 passages with the portrait of the 4 S-rank magic shooters on the schematic map and explained. Then, he pointed to the other 3 passages that would eventually converge. And those who choose the other 3 passages that will eventually converge will meet on the way to the end. When you meet, that's when the experiment begins. I see. Grace seemed to understand a little. In other words, the teams that choose the 3 passages that will converge will have to engage in a free-for-all between the 3 groups, right? That's right. Makarov nodded. Only one group can pass through this passage. Therefore, no matter what method the 3 groups use, as long as they eliminate the other 2 groups, they can proceed to the end. As long as they can reach the end, they will be considered to have passed the first phase of the S-rank magic shooter advancement test. Makarov turned his gaze to the 7 groups on the deck. Only the teams that pass the first phase of the test can continue to participate in the later phases of the test and finally pass the S-rank magic shooter advancement test to obtain the qualifications to be promoted to an S-rank magic shooter. Understand? That one sentence made the members of the 7 teams grumble incessantly. Do you understand? How could they not understand such a clear explanation? But it was precisely because they understood that they knew how difficult it was to pass the first phase of the S-rank magic shooter advancement test. Of the 7 groups, 4 of them would encounter an active S-rank archmage. Only by defeating or gaining the recognition of an active S-rank magic shooter could they pass the first phase of the test. Defeating an S-rank magic shooter. Even if it was a group of 2, it was easier said than done to be able to join forces. Not to mention, the 4 active S-rank magic shooters were almost all powerhouses that surpassed the scope of an ordinary S-rank magic shooter. Kildas and Laxas even had the ability to challenge Makarov, who was one of the top 10 saint magicians. Defeating them. Except for Noah, it could be said that there was almost no hope for the rest. As for the other 3 groups, even if they did not encounter an active S-rank magic shooter, the difficulty of passing would not be less than challenging an S-rank magic shooter due to the fierce competition. After all, it was a battle royale between 3 groups. Therefore, the difficulty of passing through the 7 passages was almost the same. Of course, if they chose a passage that was guarded by an active S-rank magic shooter, they did not necessarily have to defeat the other party. As long as they could gain the other party's recognition, they could still pass. Therefore, if they were lucky, in the end, there would be nothing more than 4 groups of people who passed the recognition of the 4 S-rank magic shooters. In addition to the group that won in the battle royale, there would be a total of 5 groups that passed the first phase of the test. But if they were unlucky and the 4 S-rank magic shooters' passages were blocked, then it was possible that only one group would be left to pass the first phase of the test. In the end, if there is only one group left to pass the first phase of the test, then the S-rank magic shooter advancement test finalists of that group can directly pass the test. Makarov coughed dryly. In other words, the first phase of the test, in addition to testing your combat strength, also tests your luck. Combat strength and luck. Everyone nodded thoughtfully. Of course, more people fell into a deep sense of powerlessness. Is the so-called S-rank magic shooter advancement test so difficult? Lucy said to Kana somewhat helplessly. Let's not talk about the other 4 passages guarded by S-rank magic shooters. Even if we choose the other 3 passages, if we encounter Noah, we won't have any chance of winning, right? Don't say such discouraging words, Lucy. Kana's smile seemed somewhat forced. Didn't the president say so? In addition to combat strength, luck is also tested, right? There must be a way, right? There must be. You really have no ambition, Gadgelo said somewhat unyieldingly. No matter who we encounter, as long as I join forces with Lily, we will definitely pass. Lily crossed his arms and smiled slightly. Let me see how powerful the S-rank magic shooters of this guild are. Julian only hopes that we don't encounter Sir Noah. Julian almost cried. Otherwise, Zhu Bian should just give up. Don't give up so easily, Julian, Rebbe said, cheering him on. Even if we encounter Noah, there will definitely be a way. Fighting against an active S-rank archmage. Gray glanced at the channel marked with the avatars of 4 S-rank archmages and glanced at Freed. If we encounter Laxus, you can't go easy on him. Of course. Freed's expression didn't change at all. Let Laxus witness my growth. That way, won't Laxus be happy? A man. Elfman shouted, a large drop of cold sweat dripping down his forehead. A man is a man with good luck. I don't understand the meaning of this sentence. Lisanna sighed and then became happy. Elfman's face lit up, and she said, it seems that the person who will pass this year's S-rank magic shooter advancement test is most likely Big Brother Noah. Yes, yes. Wendy nodded and said happily to Noah. If it's Big Brother Noah, even if he encounters an active S-rank magic shooter, he definitely won't lose. Hearing that, Noah smiled and looked in the direction of Celestial Wolf Island, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. Seeing that, Makarov suddenly revealed a strange smile. Then, the first phase of the S-rank magic shooter advancement test begins now. Begin now. Everyone was stunned. Now? Weren't they still at sea? While everyone else was still in a daze, Noah laughed bitterly. So that's how it is. Is that so? As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly turned around and hugged Wendy, who was at a loss. A pair of wings suddenly spread out from the boots on his feet. Immediately after, Noah's figure turned into a streak of light and flew in the direction of Celestial Wolf Island. Seeing this scene, the crowd finally reacted, their faces turning green and white at the same time. Stop right there. The entire deck was in a mess. Under the effect of Hermes' boots, Noah flew in the direction of Celestial Wolf Island like a streak of light and landed in a smoking area. At this moment, the 7 paths were completely presented in front of Noah. Wendy. Noah put down Wendy in his arms and asked. Can you smell which path the 4 S-rank magic shooters are in? Hearing that, Wendy twitched the tip of her nose and shook her head. No, there are many strange smells mixed in the air. I can't even tell which smell belongs to Miss Alusha and Miss Mira. Sure enough, it's not that easy. Noah nodded without the slightest surprise. He glanced around the 7 tunnels, and in the next second, he fixed his gaze on one of them. Since I can't play any tricks, I'll just have to rely on luck. Yes. Wendy nodded heavily and clenched her small fists, looking very cute. If it's Big Brother Noah, no matter who he encounters, he won't lose. Noah rubbed Wendy's small head and then led her into one of the paths. Chapter 11:20. In the dim passageway, specks of fluorescent light fluttered back and forth in the air like fireflies, illuminating some of the space. It looked somewhat beautiful. Wow, walking in such a passageway, Wendy couldn't help but exclaim. Her small hand seemed to want to catch those fireflies, but she also seemed to be a little scared. Her big watery eyes flickered with a beautiful expression. It's so beautiful here. During this important period of the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam, Wendy's performance of looking around was very relaxed. It made people think that Wendy actually didn't come here to train, but rather to travel. She was quite leisurely. If it were someone else, they might have reminded Wendy. However, Noah didn't stop Wendy and let her wander there happily. In any case, Noah and Wendy, one had a superb perception ability, while the other had an extremely powerful sense of smell. If someone intended to attack them, it would be impossible not to be discovered. In addition, Noah was skilled and daring, so he didn't dampen Wendy's spirits. While looking around and observing the terrain, Noah asked casually, "Oh right, why didn't Xiao Lulu come along?" "Xiao Lulu isn't our partner. Although the president agreed to let her come to Celestial Wolf Island, he forbade Xiao Lulu from following me," Wendy answered cleverly. "The president should be worried that Xiao Lulu will help me." In other words, Xiao Lulu is now with Grandpa. Noah nodded in understanding. "In that case, we don't have to worry about any accidents. However, for this S-rank magic shooter advancement exam, I heard that not only the 4 active S-rank magic shooters came to the island first, but also Brother Noah's brother's 2 personal guards." Wendy tilted her head. "Will Xiao Lulu be with them?" "It's possible." Noah curled his lips. Bikesro and Alba Jerlin should have set up a simple camp somewhere on Celestial Wolf Island. Xiao Lulu is very likely to have gone there. "Is that so?" Wendy said somewhat worriedly. "I hope Xiao Lulu can get along well with the 2 from Thor clan." In the midst of a rather leisurely conversation, Noah and Wendy walked along the passageway together. According to the current atmosphere, Noah and Wendy would continue to be leisurely until they encountered the enemy. Unfortunately, this leisurely atmosphere was soon replaced by another kind of atmosphere. It was a very heavy and depressing atmosphere. Noah and Wendy subconsciously slowed down their footsteps and turned their gazes to the front of the tunnel at the same time. The heavy and oppressive atmosphere was coming from the front. Big Brother Noah. Wendy's small face was tense, and some nervousness appeared in her eyes. "There's the smell of someone up ahead." "I guess so," Noah said indifferently. "It seems that we have chosen a channel guarded by an active S-rank sorcerer." Noah and Wendy were the first to arrive at Celestial Wolf Island among the 7 groups of candidates, and they were the first to choose the channel. If they had chosen a channel where 3 groups of candidates would engage in a chaotic battle, then as the first group to choose the channel, Noah and Wendy would have to wait for the other 2 groups to arrive. However, at this moment, there was already someone waiting at the front of the passageway. What did this mean? It meant that the other party had arrived at Celestial Wolf Island before the other 7 groups. Other than the S-rank sorcerer who had set off early, who else could it be? In fact, Noah had guessed correctly. As Noah and Wendy moved forward, the channel in front of them gradually opened up. Not long after, a rather vast open space appeared in front of the 2 of them. The 2 of them stopped at the same time. This was because, in the middle of the vast open space, a figure slowly raised his head under the illumination of the fluorescent light, revealing his full appearance. When the 3 pairs of eyes met, the expressions of the 3 people present were different. Wendy revealed a surprised expression. A helpless expression appeared on Noah's face. The other party revealed an unbridled expression. His expression was as if everything was going according to his wishes, faintly revealing a hint of joy. "Yo, I've been waiting for you for a long time." When he heard this voice that was as violent as before, but not as violent as before, Noah's expression became even more helpless. "I didn't expect that I would encounter a situation where I have to fight with you in the exam, Laxus." Yes. Standing in the middle of the vast open space, the S-rank sorcerer blocking Noah's path was Laxus. After a few months, the two brothers confronted each other again. However, the situation was very different. Last time, Noah and Laxus fought to settle all their past grievances. This time, Noah and Laxus fought for the S-rank sorcerer advancement exam. Or rather, this situation is exactly what I'm happy to see. Laxus grinned and pulled off his coat. Since you've met me, then you should know that I won't recognize you just because your performance is good, and obediently make way for you, right? I think so too. Noah slowly stepped forward and stood in front of Laxus, looking straight at his sworn brother. If you want to pass through here, I guess there's only one way. That's right. Laxus faced Noah's direction, turning sideways and raising his hand. His eyes became sharp. If you want to move forward, you'll have to defeat me. The moment his words fell, a violent electric current burst out from Laxus's body. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of the fierce electric current continued to resound in the sealed space. At this moment, a burst of astonishing mana slowly rose from Laxus's body, which was surrounded by violent electric currents. Chapter 11:21. What was Dragon Slayer magic? Transforming a person's physique into a dragon's physique, allowing the user to have the same physique as a dragon, increasing strength, increasing attack and defense, and even adding attribute attacks. It was a magic that allowed the user to recover by swallowing substances of the same attribute. That was the Dragon Slayer magic. In other words, the true target of the so-called Dragon Slayer magic was not other people, but the Dragon Slayer archmage who used the Dragon Slayer magic. If it was a pure attribute attack like Thunder Dragon's Roar, then it would be fine. But if it was a type of physical attack like Thunder Dragon's Crushing Fist, then it would be effective. Laxus, whose whole body was flickering with electricity, looked straight at Noah and smiled confidently. Am I right? Just as Laxus said, that the Dragon Slayer magic, possessed by Dragon Slayer archmages, was indeed a rare type of magic that could directly affect Noah's body, which was resistant to curses. Because it was a magic that allowed the user to have the physique of a dragon, and not a magic that directly affected Noah's body. In this way, although the so-called Dragon Slayer magic was still a magic, its attack method was in the form of physical attacks. It was not difficult to understand why it could affect Noah. As long as the magic is effective on you, then it's fine. The electricity on Laxus's body became even more violent. As long as it's effective, then I can continue to fight. After saying that, Laxus took a step forward. The violent magic in the form of lightning surged out from his body like a tide, turning into an electric current that formed around his body, causing the dust on the ground to fly. Be careful, Brother Noah. Wendy somewhat worriedly reminded. Noah nodded without turning his head, but his body did not move at all. At this moment, his pitch-black eyes became flickering. Beep beep beep. In the next moment, lightning suddenly flashed. Laxus, who was surrounded by violent lightning, disappeared from where he was. He turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards Noah. Almost at the same time, Noah's body suddenly took a step to the left without warning. Swish! As Noah's body moved, a fist wrapped in dense lightning brushed past Noah's side and landed in the air. Laxus's expression didn't change at all when his punch missed. His body once again turned into a bolt of lightning and swept towards Noah. Laxus's speed was extremely fast. Even if it did not reach the true speed of lightning, under the support of magic, its speed was indeed not something that could be followed by the naked eye. It could be said to be terrifying. If it were other candidates, they would have been defeated in an instant by Laxus's lightning-like speed. However, in the face of such extreme speed, Noah only lifted one foot and slightly landed on the ground. His body was like a fallen leaf in a storm, lightly floating away. A bolt of lightning rubbed against the air, and in the sharp sound of breaking through the air, it violently shot out. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning and a black shadow, one in front and one behind, chased each other in the vast open space. In terms of speed, even with the LV for agility of blessing, Noah could not beat Laxus, who used the lightning transformation magic. However, in addition to the LV for agility of blessing, Noah also had the LV for dexterity blessing. In addition, the open space was covered by Noah's sensing ability. Any movement in the wind would be detected by Noah. Even if his speed was not as fast as Laxus, Noah could rely on his flexible body to deal with Laxus, who turned into a bolt of lightning. Thus, in Wendy's eyes, a bolt of lightning constantly shot past Noah. Every time it fell in the air, it would suddenly turn, draw an arc, and continue to shoot in the direction of Noah. Noah, on the other hand, seemed to be able to see through all the trajectories of the lightning bolts. Every time the violent lightning bolts shot over, he would be able to dodge them with great agility and avoid them with great agility. Over time, every time Noah's attack was avoided by a hair's breadth, Laxus's complexion also gradually became dignified. His speed also became faster and faster, as if his magic power was free, crazily output. As the confrontation became more and more intense, Laxus's speed also became more and more terrifying. In the end, even Wendy could not see Laxus's figure. She could only feel a bolt of lightning frequently flying back and forth in the space. The speed was extremely fast. Even so, Noah's expression was still as calm as ever. Occasionally, he would take a step forward, move back, tilt to the side, and turn. Every time he made a slight movement, he would be able to brush past the lightning bolts that were shooting towards him, dodging Laxus's attack. Gradually, Laxus's mood also began to become impetuous. Indeed, Laxus saw the weakness of Noah's physique. He did not use the pure attribute attack of the Thunder Dragon's Roar, but had been using the strengthening Dragon Slayer magic to fight with Noah. However, since he could not use his attribute attack, that meant that Laxus also had no way to attack Noah from a distance, and could only engage in close combat. And Noah did not completely rely on his physique to fight. Even if the curse resistance was gone, Noah's strength was still there, and did not weaken in the slightest. Originally, Noah's strength was stronger than Laxus's. Now, Laxus's attack methods were limited, so it was natural that he could not do anything to Noah. If this continued, when Noah found an opportunity to counterattack, Laxus would definitely lose. Understanding this point, Laxus decisively squandered all his magic power. Beep beep beep. The unprecedentedly violent thunder and lightning soared up from Laxus's body, crazily rising, causing the hard ground to crack along the way, revealing the layer of soil underneath. Ha-yeah! Laxus suddenly shouted, his body shook, and his speed soared. In an instant, he flashed in front of Noah. Facing Noah head-on. Dragon Slayer Mystery. Laxus raised a fist, and the violent lightning all over his body gathered in it, causing the fist to look as if it had been struck by a bolt of lightning. Suddenly, an extremely large bolt of lightning swelled up. Thunder controlling thunder. Catching the huge thunderbolt that seemed to be able to destroy heaven and earth, Laxus clenched his fist so tightly that blue veins popped out on his arm. His face was extremely ferocious, and he mercilessly blasted in the direction of Noah, like the thunder god descending from the sky. Wherever the fist that caught the huge thunderbolt passed, the air was compressed into a chaotic flow, spreading out in all directions. The earth-shattering punch made Noah's hair flutter, revealing a pair of deep, dark eyes. Noah naturally knew that if he continued to fight, he would definitely be the one to win in the end. Noah also knew that Laxus could not possibly not understand this point. However, Noah did not expect that Laxus would actually be so decisive in making the last gamble. This was a blow that gathered all of Laxus's magic power. After using it, regardless of winning or losing, Laxus would not be able to continue fighting. Therefore, this was Laxus's last blow. In the face of this blow, Noah suddenly stopped, the corner of his mouth lifted, and his eyes that were illuminated by the terrifying thunderbolt burst out with unprecedented vigor. Buzz! At the next moment, Noah clenched one of his hands tightly, and his entire arm suddenly shook. Lines that looked like electric wires crawled on his arm. Impressively, it was the enhanced magic. With the blessing of LV for ability value, coupled with the strengthening of enhanced magic, to what extent would Noah's physical ability be strong? The answer was soon revealed. Bang! Like a bullet from the chamber, Noah rushed out, and faced the terrifying thunderbolt head-on. Annihilating blow. The vigorous vortex of air suddenly condensed on Noah's fist, covering Noah's fist. Then, under the dull sound of the explosion and Wendy's somewhat frightened gaze, the two fists that carried the vortex of air and the terrifying thunderbolt, heavily collided with each other. Bang! An earth-shattering roar burst out in the bottomless passage. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.